Welcome to episode 26 of the Cancer Pod. In this episode, we're back at the movies. Today, we're reviewing Tig, a documentary from 2015.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tina Kaiser, and one movie that always makes me laugh is Talladega Nights.
I'm Dr. Leah Sherman, and damn it, that was my movie too.
No way!
No, seriously!
We're two naturopathic doctors who practice integrative cancer care.
But we're not your doctors.
This is for education, entertainment, and informational purposes only.
Do not apply any of this information without first speaking to your doctor.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast by the hosts and their guests are solely their own.
Welcome to the Cancer Pod. Hey, Tina.
Hi, Leah.
We're back at the movies.
This time with a focus on cancer.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some cancer stories, some documentaries about real people who had cancer.
Yeah, and just to recap for anyone who's a new listener, we did a series on movies or so-called documentaries.
So-called shockumentaries.
Documentaries on nutrition and diet.
Yeah, so we just figured we're the Cancer Pod, so let's watch some cancer-related movies.
That was the feedback we got, or I got.
No, I guess we both did, yeah. And some of the movies were recommended to us, and some of them I just kind of found. And apparently, the one we're about to talk about today, we both started watching it and didn't remember starting watching it until we watched the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm guessing that I did it so many years ago, it just kind of slipped my mind that I even started watching it.
It was on your Netflix list. Like on mine, it was definitely saved. So yeah, I must have started watching it at one point and then got distracted. So I guess we'll just start talking about the movie.
Yep.
So our first documentary is called Tig, and it's about Tig Notaro.
Yeah, and it came out in 2015, so it's been around for a little while now.
Yeah, and it's available to watch on Netflix, as we mentioned. It's been on our list. And yeah, so we'll talk about what the movie is about and what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it, and if there were any moments, that we could relate to or what part stuck out the most, I guess, defining moments.
Yeah, and maybe we can find some general information that's applicable to whoever's listening.
Yeah. So who is Tig Notaro? For those of you who are living under a rock, I'll get to that in a second. Tig Notaro is a comedian. She's an actor. She's a podcaster. She has two podcasts that are out now, Don't Ask Tig and Tig and Cheryl True Story, which is kind of where we got the idea for doing this, the movie reviews. She, along with Cheryl Hines, who is also an actor, they talk about documentaries.
And apparently Tig had a podcast back in the day, at least 10 years ago, called Professor Blastoff.
Yeah. I didn't even know they had podcasts 10 years ago. So she's on the forefront of that. I should have looked up to see who did the first one. Could have been Tig. I don't know. So the Under the Rock thing is that's how I kind of first heard of her. I think I learned about her having had breast cancer and talking about it as part of her comedy routine and making appearances where she was topless. And so you just saw her mastectomy scars. And I had just completed treatment in like 2015. And I think that's when I learned of her. And I was like, oh, that's pretty badass, especially the whole like turning cancer into comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I discovered on YouTube, she had a show called Under a Rock with Tig Notaro. And it is so funny because apparently she's not into pop culture. And so these famous people who are fans of hers come on this show and it's like a game show. She has to figure out who they are. And it is really funny.
I need to watch that. I've never seen it.
You do need to watch it because you also are not big into pop culture.
True that.
And so I might have to start doing like game show type things to get you to know who people are. Because I think you know who people are. You just might not know their names or their faces, but you're probably aware of things that people have done.
Okay.
Am I giving you too much credit?
You might be, because I think it's shocking. I'm shockingly ignorant when it comes to pop culture.
I think you know more than you think you know. So how did you first hear of Tig?
I honestly don't remember. I watched her There was a series or a sitcom type thing, something with Mississippi in it.
One Mississippi, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't seen that. It's on my list.
Yeah. See, I liked the sitcom.
Oh, you did?
I did. Yeah. I thought that was really good.
I think she's really good. I love, she's kind of got like that sort of dry sense of humor, really subtle, you know?
Yeah. I feel like she could be any one of our friends.
Oh, completely.
Much funnier, you know, like a well-crafted version, stand-up comedic version of a lot of our friends, or like maybe a composite of several friends put together.
I have some pretty funny friends. I think she could hold her own against some of my friends.
Wait, you mean your friends could hold their own against her?
No, I'm just saying that I think she could fit in.
Oh.
All right. So let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we will do our little summary of what the movie's about.
All right.
Okay, so today we're talking about the documentary Tig, and I'll read the summary that was on Netflix so that y'all can know what it's about. You ready for this? Are you ready for this?
I'm so ready for this.
So comedian Tig Notaro had a devastating year, having just recovered from a life-threatening infection and still in mourning over her mother's sudden passing. Notaro's subsequent discovery of bilateral breast cancer left her no choice but to turn profound pain into an ongoing punchline, both on and off the stage. Netflix original documentary Tig tells the incredible story of her search and discovery of humor and love amid devastating news.
That's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I think we're done. I think that explains the whole movie right there.
There you go. Again, it's on Netflix. We'll talk to you later.
And on that note, no, I mean that's a perfect summary. So it kind of starts off where, you know, she's touring, she's got her podcast, she's working on a pilot. I guess she's made or is making a movie. She talks about how she wants to be pregnant.
In her words, she just says 2012 was her busiest year ever.
Yeah.
Everything was starting to click and come together, and she even started thinking about having a baby because she was busy enough to basically not have to be on the road all the time. She had enough projects in LA that she could be somewhat stable, location-wise.
Right. And then all of a sudden she becomes really ill, like really ill. And I guess it took a while for them to kind of figure out what was going on with her. And it turned out she had C. diff.
Yes. So C. difficile is intestinal infection that is sometimes hard to treat. I mean, usually it gets pretty advanced before it gets diagnosed because it's not commonly found unless it might be commonly found during treatment or when you're immune suppressed or when there's other things going on. But she had a C. diff infection.
Didn't seem to have other stuff going on.
Not that she knew of.
Yeah. And so she lost a whole lot of weight. They're trying to figure out what's going on with her. And then what I thought was really kind of interesting is they had, like voice messages and texts. Like, were those still on her phone? Like, that's kind of cool if they were. Because they had conversations that they were like reenacting texts. And then they also had actual voice messages. And one of the voice messages on March 24th, 2012 was her birthday. And her mom left her a birthday message.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then she gets a message from her stepfather. And it turns out her mom had an accident and that she fell and she hit her head and it was pretty bad and she was in the hospital.
And so just to put this all in context, she went from this infection in her gut, the C. difficile infection, laid out, hospitalized, so weak she could barely get out of a chair. And then it's just 1 week later, on the 12th of March, I think it was, while she's ill, her mother calls and says, "I hope you're feeling better." And then on the 24th of March, she got a happy birthday message. So it was like within 2 weeks of her being in the hospital that her mom calls her. Right. And says, "Happy birthday."
Right. 2 days later, she fell, hit her head. And I don't know. This was like the hard part for me, just the fact that like she's with her mom in the hospital, like she wasn't going to leave her mom. They're told, your mom is basically brain dead and she doesn't know what's going on, but like Tig won't leave her mom. And I mean, she was there when her mom died.
That was the most emotive scene in the entire movie for Tig as well. I mean, that's when we saw her tear up. Not her own cancer, it was her mom's passing and telling the story on camera that made her emote the most in the entire movie, I think.
And like, I mean, I think that's how it was for me. Was I had lost my father earlier in the year, prior to my diagnosis. And yeah, to me, that was far more devastating than my own news, later in the year. So that part, that part was really hard. She talks about her mom throughout the movie, and she says like her mom is where she got her sense of humor. They had all this footage and like photos and stuff and, of her mom. And she describes her as like a prankster,
Yeah.
She says, she said this one line, when I lost my mother, I lost the person who understood me the most, and I mean, that's just, I don't know. I mean, the loss of a parent it's really difficult. So she has all of this going on in her life. She's ill. She loses her mom. I think she even goes through a breakup, which they don't really go into too much. They kind of mention it on the side.
Right.
And she ends up doing This American Life. And he talks to her about like, she should talk about all these tragedies that she's gone through, like in her comedy. And she's like, I don't know how to do this. Like she couldn't see that. And then in July of that year, she finds a lump in her breast.
Yeah. It turns out she's got breast cancer in both breasts.
Yeah. She has bilateral breast cancer and she underwent a double mastectomy. And she says like about the, what was going on, everything came over me as funny. And I think that's so true, right? I mean, it's when you're diagnosed with cancer, I mean, it is a devastating diagnosis, but at the same time, it's like, it's incredibly absurd, especially like everything that you go through with exams and you just like lose your privacy, you lose your inhibitions and, all of these types of things.
And it's not that funny in real time for most people. I mean, I do think that Tig has a special place for using comedy to get through life in general, even at this point. So at this point, we're in 2012. She's been doing comedy for her entire life. So in 2012, she's 42 years old, maybe 41. So it's how she is able to cope too.
Doesn't everybody?
I don't think so. No.
Not everybody uses humor to cope with tragedy.
No, I think that some people do. Tig certainly does. It's a good tool, right? I mean, it seems healthy. And I understand what you're saying, the ludicrousness of what's going on compared to what happens in the real world. I get that.
Yeah. How 1 minute you're like kind of going about your life and then all of a sudden this one discovery just knocks you off your feet. I mean, I guess I don't think I'm being flip, but I just know a lot of people who have used comedy to deal with their cancer.
I always think to myself, you've seen a lot of cancer patients and you can just think of the gamut of different reactions during treatment, that it runs the whole gamut, like the entire spectrum, and whatever people feel is fine. Like whatever that is, it is. It's not expected, not expected. It's just everyone gets a cancer diagnosis in the context of a larger life. So I just assume everyone does what they do and reacts how they will. And that's, I guess, from my perspective as a clinician, I'm just thinking I hold the space for that. I think I've seen the whole gamut.
I don't know. I do think, I think the whole thing is absurd. I think it's just absolutely ridiculous that our bodies turn on us like that. And apparently so did she, and she used it to her advantage. In terms of, in August of that year, after her, diagnosis, she does a show at this club called Largo. And she basically walks out on stage and she says, "Good evening. I have cancer. How are you?" And it was like, apparently this mind-blowing set where people were encouraging her to go on. She just was like raw and out there. I mean, people were crying in the audience and there are other comedians there and they're tweeting like, "I just saw the best show of my life. Like this is one of the greatest performances I'd ever seen." And she pretty much becomes an overnight sensation.
Yeah. And that is the pivot point. So we see the before and after of that pivot point in her life, in her way of being. Early on, really early in the movie, Tig kind of sets us up as the viewer by saying when she's on stage, and this is a quote, "They get me, I get them, and they get the person next to them." So she's saying the audience, when things are going well and you're clicking, there's a understanding between everybody. And I think what she really enjoys is facilitating the human connection between everyone in the room. So I thought that was a really interesting way to put it when she said what she gets from comedy and why she does it.
Yeah, no, I remember when she said that quote, and it's kind of like comedy it's a great unifier. You can have people with different life experiences, and you all go to a comedy show, and everybody's just starts laughing over the same stuff, and yeah, it's just kind of like that's a great way to bring people together.
Yeah, and I thought that was so cool because all I can think to myself is, we all have certain skills and talents, and I just thought, that's awesome because she uses her power for good. That's how I think of it. It's like she has this capability to bring the room together and have a common moment and connection that she facilitates. So I just thought that was such a cool thing. And then so when she goes on later to find her voice after her own cancer diagnosis, or find a voice with the cancer diagnosis after the tragedy after tragedy in the prior months, I think of that quote in context of that. It's like she brought that room together that one night that you're talking about in a way that was profound, and everyone who was there knew it, that there was a connection being had between her and each other, and the absurdity of life, of the pain and the comedy all wrapped together. I mean, it was really pretty awesome.
Yeah, and she had some quote, which was kind of like ran through a couple times about God doesn't give you more than you can handle. But then she made a joke of it because, apparently God kept handing her more crap. just keeps doling it out. So throughout the movie, like it keeps coming back to like the loss of her mother, and then also to like her desire to have a family. She is still very close to her family back in Mississippi. And you can tell like family is like so important to her. She says something else about she can adjust to her body being different and eating differently. But like losing her mother isn't fine or isn't okay. I can't remember exactly what she said, but I don't know. These are just things that like, when something happens to a person, I think it's often easier to manage because you're in survival mode. But when you're witness to something happening to a loved one, there's that feeling of helplessness, So yeah, I don't know. I really did identify with that feeling that she had. So you mentioned that she was trying to find her comedy again after the show that she did. And, you see her like running through like the same joke, like throughout the movie, like trying to find her punchline, trying to find the laugh in her joke. And you also see how, what I thought was like a really, really interesting part was when she is going through the consult for the hormone therapy to become pregnant. She chooses that she is going to undergo, fertility treatment for one cycle and harvest the eggs. And she didn't realize that after her double mastectomy, if the cancer came back, it wouldn't be treatable.
Well, that was an interesting example of the doctor said, if it comes back, it is not curable. And then they have a scene with her in the car, and she says something along the lines of, I didn't know that it wasn't going to be treatable if it came back. It is treatable.
It's just not curable.
Right. And that was, for me, I've had that happen too in my office where I think I'm saying one thing and the patient hears another thing. And then when we meet again, I'm like, wait a second, is that what you heard? That's not what I meant for you to come away with, right? So I caught that immediately because curable and treatable are two very different things, right?
Right. But even in her hearing treatable, and maybe in her mind, she thought that was the same as curable. That is a really common occurrence with patients not realizing like, okay, I've removed my breasts. I'm not going to get breast cancer anymore.
Yeah. And she quoted the surgeon, and whether this was said or not, we will never know. But the surgeon said, we got it all. Right. And most surgeons aren't going to say that. And most surgeons I know would never say that because they don't know that. But I don't know. That's what the patient heard. So that's what we'll go with. I got it all is a good thing to say because you want them to walk away confident. But the truth is you don't know if there's a small amount of disease somewhere else in the body.
And she does bring that up later, because if she, the risk of doing the hormone treatment is that if there is cancer, some occult cancer somewhere, that it could get triggered because she had a hormone positive breast cancer. And she did talk about she would be doing hormone therapy for 5 years following, not the fertility treatment, but,
yes,
tamoxifen or aromatase inhibitor. She doesn't go into what she was going to take, but she does. She has this best friend from her childhood, and he is the sperm donor, and they harvest the eggs, and, they talk about how many were viable, and, they just kind of go through that part of it. And she starts to she meets a surrogate. She finds a surrogate in a really kind of odd way.
A surrogate volunteered, contacted her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A surrogate found her.
Mm-hmm. Through her podcast.
Mm-hmm. So, they have a scene where she goes and she meets with them and everything. And then there's this other kind of subplot where there's a woman, Stephanie, who they had been in a movie together, and they just started hanging out and became really, really good friends. And Stephanie only saw that this was a friendship. She never saw that there was any sort of romantic potential because she had only been with men previously. And then when Tig realizes that this is not going to go in the direction she wants, she ends the relationship with Stephanie.
Right. Because it's torture otherwise. If you're in love with someone and you're BFFs, you just can't keep going that direction.
Right. And, I'm sure it was really hard because they were best friends. And so, losing your best friend after everything that you've been through, it must have been really hard.
Yeah. And Stephanie, in this time when they're apart, it's the classic, you don't know what you got till it's gone moment. So she realizes that she doesn't want to live without Tig.
Yeah. Right.
So that was a nice kind of, life goes on. What I liked about this entire documentary is, there's books on, cancer is a turning point. Cancer is this, seminal moment. You have life before and life after. And it's all very true. But I liked the fact that the emphasis was on how it changed and how there was a pivot once she became public with that and did that one routine that changed her life. But there was so much life going on at the same time, right? It wasn't just about cancer. It wasn't like, here's my cancer journey from day one through treatment. It was, this is my life in 2012 mm-hmm. and all the way through 2013 to an extent. I thought that it was really artfully done in that she did with the documentary what she does on stage, which is make it very relatable. I thought that was really well done. Right,
because even with this diagnosis, she still goes through with the plan of trying to have a baby. She gets into a relationship. The relationship ends because it's not the relationship she was hoping for. It's all kind of culminating up to the anniversary show.
Anniversary of what?
The 1 year since her coming out with cancer. Yeah, so she kind of hold on. Was that the show where she came up with the punchline for that running joke? There was that whole running joke about her being flat chested.
I've made so many jokes over the years about how flat chested I was. My boobs overheard me and were just like, we are sick of this. Let's kill her.
Which I think is really funny because I had a whole lot of jokes about being flat chested too. Do you want to hear my joke?
Yeah.
I'm no Tig Notaro, but so I my whole life, all I ever wanted was curly hair and larger breasts. And after cancer, I got both.
Your hair got curly after chemo.
Hair got curly after chemo. And I had such small breasts that my implants ended up bringing me up to a bigger size. So I'm not very good at telling jokes, apparently. But it's actually really freaking funny. You have to be careful what you wish for because you don't always know how you're going to get it.
All right. I'm going to start wishing for some other things then. Pretty hard.
You have to be really specific about what you wish for because you might get curly hair and larger breasts, but it's not the way you wanted to get it. Anyways, okay. We'll move on from it's funny. That's the thing. Cancer people are laughing right now because they're like, I totally get that. Damn it, my hair's curly too. You laugh at my jokes when the camera's not on. I know you do. That's the thing. You're being very professional right now.
I'm just smiling large.
You are smiling.
Yes.
It's a funny joke, but not my delivery. Like I said, I'm no Tig Notaro. Okay. Anything else we need to add about the movie? We kind of told like everything. Are we supposed to tell like how the movie kind of ends? I mean, I guess if you look her up.
I mean, we know she lives. She's still around.
Yes. Well, yes. So
I mean, that is the ending. The ending is she carries on.
Well, yeah, she's doing great. She's like hugely popular. And I mean, she and Stephanie got married and they actually had twins through a surrogate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she's got her family and that's kind of cool. So yeah, I guess like the message is like life continues,
Yeah. Cancer happens in the context of life.
Right.
It's consuming, don't get me wrong, during treatment and in many ways afterwards. But I think that's what I liked about this. Her defining moment, strangely enough, wasn't even the cancer diagnosis. Her defining moment was that one skit on stage where she went from a private person to completely bearing all of her vulnerabilities and all of her trials and tribulations of the last, 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, what question that struck me was, to what extent, when you define something publicly and you share an experience with other people, in what ways does that change your experience itself, right? So privately, if she had never done that skit, would she be in a different place? Not just professionally, I mean, just personally. Like, was bearing that on stage and making it public, was that part of getting over it? Because like she said, all this love poured at me and all this kindness, she was just floored by how much people felt for her and that compassion and just kind of knowing that your faith in humanity is restored with that rather than your private moments where you may not experience that. I don't know.
Yeah. And there's something different with being a cancer person where when you learned that someone else has this shared experience, it may not be the same cancer. It may not be the same treatment. It may not have the same, outcomes, but there's that connection, like what her connection of comedy is. There's that cancer connection where, I mean, there are other people, maybe it's just me, but like, you learn that someone else had cancer, someone who if there's like an actor or celebrity or, singer or someone, and you find out that they have a history of cancer, suddenly it's like, oh, I might not have been interested in them before, but now I'm a little interested, because of that connection. Maybe that's me. Maybe I'm just shallow, but.
No, I think that making it relatable is her superpower, right? Like she's a high school dropout. She is a hardworking and mostly rejected comedian in the 1990s. I mean, that's what you do when you start out. They put in scenes from 1997 and 99 and early 2000s where she's not doing great and she's funny, but not hysterical. And so she's working hard and she's not feeling a lot of love in general. I mean, she is relatable because she's failed, she's lost a parent, she's had a breakup. I mean, any one of these things are relatable, and cancer is just one of the many, many things that happened to her in the context of that. So what I'm saying is she puts a lot of relatable characteristics or experiences out there. So no matter who you are as a viewer, you can relate to her. And cancer gets put in there alongside these. And arguably, she actually says, it's not the worst thing. Losing my mother was the worst thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so she really draws in the viewer in a intimate way by doing that, because if you've lost a parent, you know what she's saying. So I think that was the brilliance of the movie. I actually thought, because I looked at it as a craft. And speaking of craft, when she went through that one joke over and over and finally delivers it on the anniversary of the seminal moment where she gets notoriety for that first time that, she does that skit in 2012 in August that makes her famous or overnight viral, whatever. And a year later gets back up on stage. She finally delivers that joke and delivers it perfectly. I love the fact that they showed her crafting that joke, because I have this I like to watch the crafting of an art. You know, she's an artist, she's talented, but she's also skilled at crafting the joke, reading the audience, and delivering it at that moment in a way that will land. Like, I just think that that's, as an artist, I think that was pretty profound to watch.
Oh no, that part that was totally cool. But that's like I told you about that. I think I told you about how I watched that Beatles series, Get Back.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I was a huge Beatles fan growing up, and it shows them like tinkering on the piano, and you're like, oh my God, that's the beginning of such and such a song. And then they're going through the lyrics, and you're like, those aren't the right lyrics. And you see them like it's the same thing, right? Where they're like creating something that in the end, you're like, oh my gosh, there's the art. But you're watching them like mold and change and collaborate. And, you know, she didn't collaborate with anyone for her joke, but yeah, no, that was great. I loved that repetition of the joke throughout. And then in the end, she's got her punchline.
And the effort it takes to make something look so effortless, you know, I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Cool to see.
All right. So I think we covered everything. I mean, we kind of talked about the things that we liked. We talked about several defining moments.
I have one question.
Do we cut to a break and then come back to it?
All right, let's do that. My question is, why was there a camera with her the whole time?
So I don't think it was. I think that there were parts where there were reenactments.
Oh.
At least the parts with Stephanie, I'm assuming. But yeah, I think parts of it were reenactments.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't, because I didn't, you know, critically look at it. But after I saw the whole thing, I was like, wait, how did we get so much footage of 2012? I guess, you know, she did have her breakout on that one night, August 3rd of 2012. So maybe right after that, someone said, let's make a documentary on you, or I don't know. It seemed like there was a camera a lot of the time around her.
Right. Because I mean, there's that one footage of her in the hospital, and, you know, she's got her friends in there, and it's obviously shot on a phone, but the rest of the footage was, it was pretty high quality. So yeah, there were parts that were reenactments for sure. But you kind of forget about it while you're in there. And then, then you do look back.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, wait a minute. Was she planning on doing a documentary?
Or, you know, with that immediate kind of notoriety, maybe she did get an offer right away to say, let's do a documentary. I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, she was kind of already plugged into the whole industry in LA. So it's totally possible.
Yeah, I have no idea. I do know that some parts were reenactments, and that, well, what's interesting is her very first show at Largo, her defining moment, I guess, cameras were not allowed.
Right.
And so there was just an audio recording. And so they had snippets of that throughout the film. And then for the anniversary show, they did allow cameras in. So yeah, I don't know.
I'm really bad at removing my messages. I've got messages from eons ago. I've had voicemails from 2015 and, 6-7 years ago.
Oh, I do too. And then when I've upgraded my phone, especially with, losing both my parents, I have somewhere on my backups their voicemails and stuff. So, I mean, that part I get. I think, I don't know. I think after first learning, like I had mentioned, after first learning about her and how, she used humor, as her, I don't want to say it's her coping mechanism, but, using humor and cancer together, that was something that I could really, really relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what are we going to use for our rating scale?
Let's just use our cancer pod.
We could use our cancer pod. And then we could have like another one of like Kleenex rating. Like how many Kleenex did you go through?
1 to 5? 0 to 5?
0 to Kleenex box. 0 to the entire box. Yeah. So, okay. So would you recommend this movie to someone?
Yeah, I would recommend it. Mm-hmm.
Even if they didn't know who she was?
Yes. I think it was entertaining, standing all alone by itself. Cancer, no cancer, the whole thing. I think it was well done. And I was entertained. I will say this, though. She talks slowly. So later on, when I went to do like just a little refresher for our recording, I could watch it at 1.25 just as well. The speed, I sped it up just a little bit so I can get it done. She talks so slowly that at 1.25 speed, she was speaking normally.
Oh, really? Oh, well, I normally speak very slowly too. So I did not notice that she spoke slowly. I wonder if it's because she's Southern and it's just kind of like, she's got that relaxed kind of way of speaking,
Absolutely.
She's not East Coaster like we are, even though I speak slow. Well, depends on the day. Anyways, yeah, no, I highly recommend this movie. I also highly recommend anything that I've seen her do because, whether it's interviews or whatever, because I do find her hysterically funny. And then the Kleenex quotient.
I didn't have a Kleenex moment in this one.
And I don't think that it was really going for a Kleenex moment. I had probably, I'm going to say one tissue just because of the whole, I get it, losing a parent, two parents. Yeah, that just automatically for me, deserving of at least one Kleenex. But yeah, I think it's a very positive movie. Highly recommended. 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I think on the Kleenex quotient in general, you're always going to be a little ahead of me. That's my guess.
I cry easily. I cry at commercials. So, yeah. And the next 2 films that we have picked, I think are definitely, we're going to be bringing out the Kleenex box. But I think they'll also have that sort of life affirming feeling. And yeah, I don't know. Did we say how many pods that you are going to give the movie?
If 5 is the top, I'm a tough grader, so I'm going to give it 4. Do I give it that last half or don't I? That's the question. I give it 4.5.
Oh, that's what I was going to do too. I was going to do 4.5 as well.
I don't even know why I'm withholding a half, except to say that I just don't want to be, top grade is, I don't know. It's got to be like mind blowing, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was just I don't know. I don't know why. I think I got to leave room. I got to leave room for the next ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Because so we can't grade the movies on a curve because we haven't seen all the movies.
Exactly.
So we don't know. Maybe one will be better than this. And if so, we've got that little reserved half a pod.
We're going to be like 5 3/4, 5 2/5. Okay. So we don't have a song. This is back to the movies. There was no, I don't think there was any song that really stuck out in the movie. So we might just skip the song for this one.
All right. So this is the part where we ask for your support, however you can do it. Subscribe, follow us, whatever platform you're listening on. Go to our website, check us out. What else?
Leave a review, leave a comment, say hi, how you doing? We like these 2. They're kind of awesome.
Yes. If you're on social media, then please go to Instagram especially and say hello and give us a little shout out. What else?
Oh, you could buy us a coffee. We both really love coffee. Any coffee that you buy us will help us create more content. And also maybe one day we will get some support and get an editor and a producer because this is all grassroots.
That's right.
My goal is to find a social media manager, so free up a little bit of my time.
Are you looking for volunteers? Anyone out there listening with social media experience, call Leah.
I don't think anybody's going to want to do it on the volunteer basis. I think that's just me. Anyways, anything else we need to add?
No, that's everything.
All right. So our next film that we're going to review is called Miss Sharon Jones, and it's about Sharon Jones from Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings. They were a funk soul band who had like an underground following.
Okay.
So it's available to watch on some of those streaming platforms. And I believe you can watch it for free on Tubi if you register with Tubi. But then you can also pay like a few bucks and rent it.
Nice. I haven't seen it yet, so I look forward to it.
Yeah. And bring your Kleenex box.
All right.
But it's going to have amazing music for sure.
All right. Well, that's good. That's an incentive because the Kleenex box is not.
No, I think you will appreciate the music because I don't think you're not familiar with the band, right?
Not at all.
Yeah, and it's totally like my vibe of music. So I'm really excited to learn more about her.
All right.
So on that note, I'm Dr. Leah Sherman.
And I'm Dr. Tina Kaiser.
And this is the Cancer Pod.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Cancer Pod. Remember to subscribe, review, and rate us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media for updates. And as always, this is not medical advice. These are our opinions. Talk to your doctor before changing anything related to your treatment plan. The Cancer Pod is hosted by me, Dr. Leah Sherman, and by Dr. Tina Kaiser. Music is by Kevin MacLeod. See you next time.
If you ain't first, you're last.